Rachel had perfected the art of deception, and this time, her target was a Korean tech CEO on the verge of signing a multi-million-dollar contract with her. Everything was unfolding exactly as she planned. Smooth words, confident smiles, carefully hidden traps until Tyler stepped into the room carrying a tray of coffee. As he placed the cups on the table, his eyes drifted across the open documents, and a single sentence jumped out at him. He froze. He knew instantly what it meant. Before he could stop himself, he blurted in fluent Korean, "This is a trap." The CEO's eyes widened in shock. Rachel stiffened in her chair, and for a heartbeat, no one moved. Though the CEO had already read a Korean translation of the contract, Rachel had slipped in additional clauses in English, taking advantage of his limited fluency. When he realized the truth, he pushed the papers away and walked out. Rachel's mask cracked. She turned on Tyler with cold fury and fired him on the spot. But fate had other plans. The very next day, the Korean CEO managed to find Tyler's phone number and asked to meet privately. When they sat down together, the CEO leaned forward with a quiet intensity and proposed something unbelievable, an opportunity not only to expose Rachel, but to take back the power she had stolen from so many others. What he suggested was bold, risky, and deeply personal, and it was only the beginning. Curious to know what this shocking proposal was? Wondering how Tyler, an ordinary coffee server, became the key to unraveling Rachel's entire operation? But before we continue, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Now, let's uncover how the story really began. Tyler pushed the conference room door open with his shoulder, balancing a tray of coffee cups that rattled softly with every step. He wore the same gentle smile he always did, polite, warm, almost invisible. But behind it, beneath months of quiet observation and silent dread, something tight and uneasy pressed at his ribs. The office looked warm under the amber lights, but he could feel a strange coldness threading through the air, something that always seemed to follow Rachel whenever she was performing. She was performing now. Rachel sat across from Mr. Kim Junho, a neatly dressed Korean tech CEO in his mid-40s. His posture was polite, formal, the sort of respectful restraint that people like Rachel always mistook for gullibility. She leaned forward, manicured nails tapping the edge of a contract folder as though she were tapping the edge of a trapdoor. Every gesture was rehearsed, her smile stretched just enough to look trustworthy, but never enough to reach her eyes. "This is an incredible opportunity for you, Mr. Kim," she purred. "Very exclusive. Very beneficial to your company's global expansion." Tyler moved quietly, setting down the cups one by one, trying to look like nothing more than a service ghost passing through the room. But as he leaned forward to place Mr. Kim's drink, a line of small English text snagged his eye. Full asset transfer upon signing, non-reversible within 90 days. His stomach dropped. The Korean translation sitting beside it, he recognized the phrasing. Polite, simplified, and absolutely missing the clause that would financially gut Mr. Kim's entire company. Tyler's heartbeat thundered in his ears. He'd been suspicious for months, seeing documents shift subtly under Rachel's hand clauses added, removed, translated incorrectly by mistake. He had watched investors leave meetings pale and shaken. But this was daylight robbery, and Mr. Kim, trusting, earnest, unaware, lifted the pen. Something primal surged through Tyler. The fear, the moral weight, the months of swallowing his voice, it all collided. Before he could stop himself, the words tore out of him. "This is a trap." The room froze. Mr. Kim's hand halted midair. His eyes widened, confusion flickering into alarm. Rachel's entire face flicked through shock, disbelief, fury, and then straight into the brittle smile she wore whenever she was seconds away from destroying someone. "Tyler," she said softly, like a knife sliding free. "What are you doing?" He shouldn't have spoken. He knew that. But now that the dam had cracked, the truth poured out of him. He gestured at the documents, switching between Korean and English in panicked bursts, explaining the discrepancy, the missing clause, the danger. Mr. Kim listened, stiffening, his breath shaking as he scanned the contracts again, this time with new eyes. "This. Not right," he said in halting English. "I need reconsider." He rose quickly, collecting his papers in trembling hands. Rachel stood too, desperately trying to realign the situation. "Mr. Kim, please, there's been a misunderstanding. It's a very common—" But he was already moving, bowing to Tyler with a quiet, strained gratitude before slipping out the door. The moment the latch clicked shut, the smile fell off Rachel's face like a mask made of brittle glass. Rage carved itself across her features, raw, unplugged, deadly. "You just cost me $12 million. Tyler felt heat prick behind his eyes. His hands shook. He'd seen her angry before, but never like this. Never with this cold animal sharpness. "You're fired," she hissed. "Get out. Now." She didn't wait for a response. She didn't need one. Rachel turned her back to him and walked out, heels clicking like gunshots on the polished floor. Tyler stood frozen, the tray suddenly heavy in his hands. Employees nearby had heard everything. He could see it in their fixed gazes, their stiff shoulders, the way their eyes dropped the moment he looked at them. None of them stepped forward. None of them said a word. They had all seen Rachel destroy people before. He packed his few belongings into a small cardboard box, a pen, a mug his friends gave him, a handwritten note taped under his keyboard reminding him to drink water. His mind buzzed with shame, fear, but also something else. A tiny ember of defiance he had never let himself acknowledge. Maybe for once he had done something that mattered. As he walked out of the building, the winter air hit his face, cold and damp. He pulled his jacket tighter around himself, feeling suddenly small against the weight of the city pressing down on him. Sky looked heavy, as though it might rain at any moment. For the first time in months, he felt utterly alone. But somewhere, beneath the fear and uncertainty, a flicker of something warm sparked. He had saved someone from losing his entire life's work, even if no one else knew. Even if he had paid for it with his job. He took a shaky breath. Maybe that mattered more than anything. Tyler sat on the edge of his narrow bed, staring down at the dim glow of his phone screen. His apartment was painfully quiet, the kind of silence that didn't soothe but pressed against his skin like cold water. The landlord's notice still lay on the kitchen counter, a small, rectangular threat he had carefully avoided touching since getting home. His rent was already late once. He didn't have the luxury of losing a job, not in this city, not with the kind of savings he had, nearly none. He rubbed both hands over his face, his breath unsteady as the memories replayed. The conference room, Rachel's glare. The moment the word fired cut through him like a sudden slap. His chest tightened. He'd done something brave. He knew that. But bravery didn't pay bills. His phone buzzed suddenly, the vibration startling in the quiet. He stared at the name lighting up the screen. Min Jun. A moment later, before he could answer, another call came in. Sua. They were calling together, something they often did when they sensed he was spiraling. He hesitated only a moment before picking up. "Tyler, ya!" Min Shun's voice came through first, warm and familiar. The Korean honorific slipping out the way it always did when he was worried. "We heard someone from the company posted about the incident. Are you okay?" Swa added softly. She always asked questions as if she were afraid the answer might break something. Tyler swallowed hard. I don't know. I think I did the right thing, but I don't know what happens now." There was a beat of silence, one filled not with judgment, but with the weight of unspoken fears they all understood too well. "You did the right thing," Minjun said with quiet certainty. "A scam like that? You stopped it. That's not small." "That's not nothing." But being right doesn't come with a paycheck, Tyler whispered, his throat tightening. Sua exhaled, and he could hear the rustling of her shifting closer to her microphone. "We're here. Whatever happens, you're not alone." It was such a simple sentence, and yet it cut straight through him, loosening something clenched inside. His eyes stung. He pressed his hands against them as if he could stop the emotion from spilling out. "Thank you," he managed, voice cracking. They stayed on the call another 20 minutes, talking about nothing and everything. Their shared history weighed warmly between them. Late-night gaming sessions that sometimes ended in laughter so violent, Tyler nearly fell off his chair. Shared Korean takeout eaten sprawled across Minshon's floor. The nights they taught him phrases and teased him when he mixed up formalities. They didn't tell him everything would be okay. They weren't the type to give empty promises. But they stayed, and in that staying, Tyler found enough strength to breathe through the night. When the call ended, the silence returned, but it felt a little less heavy. He lay back on his small bed, staring up at the ceiling, waiting for sleep to come. It didn't. Instead, exhaustion claimed him only minutes before dawn, his phone still resting on his chest. The sharp ping of a text jolted him awake hours later. His vision was blurry. His head felt heavy. He reached for the phone, wiped his eyes, and blinked at the unfamiliar number on his screen. Unknown. Mr. Tyler? "This is Kim Junho. Can we meet? Important." Tyler sat up so fast the blanket twisted around his legs. His heart thudded painfully. Why would Mr. Kim contact him directly? Was he angry? Was he thanking him? Did he want to compensate him? The thought felt both tempting and shameful, like something he shouldn't hope for. His fingers hovered over the keyboard before he replied, "Yes. Where?" The address came quickly. A small, quiet coffee shop downtown. Neutral ground. Tyler dressed shakily, checked his reflection in the hallway mirror, then checked it again. He didn't know what expression he was supposed to wear. Gratitude? Apology? Fear? By the time he arrived, his stomach was twisted into a tight knot. The coffee shop was softly lit, filled with the soft hum of low conversations and the smell of roasted beans. It felt safe in a way he hadn't felt in weeks. Mr. Kim arrived 5 minutes later, wearing casual clothes that made him blend into the crowd, a gray sweater, dark jeans. Without the armor of a business suit, he looked less like a CEO and more like a man shouldering something heavy. He bowed slightly. Tyler bowed back, flustered. They sat across from each other. Mr. Kim shifted awkwardly, searching for words, and then lifted his phone. A translation app spoke his message aloud in a soft, robotic voice. "You saved me." Tyler exhaled shakily. He didn't realize how badly he had needed to hear that. Mr. Kim typed again, his fingers trembling slightly. "That woman. She has done this before?" Tyler hesitated, but nodded. I don't have proof, but I've seen things. Missing invoices. Strange last-minute changes. People fired after they ask questions. She hides things. Or destroys them." Mr. Kim swallowed hard, jaw tightening. He reached into his bag and pulled out a folder worn, thick, full. He slid it across the table with a solemnity that made Tyler's chest tighten. Inside were documents, screenshots, reports, names, 3 foreign investors, 2 small business owners, all scammed, all silenced. Tyler felt a cold wave crawl up his spine. "I have resources, Mr. Kim typed, money, connections, but I need someone who knows her, someone who sees how she works, someone she does not fear yet." Tyler stared at him, pulse thudding. "What are you suggesting?" he whispered. Mr. Kim finally looked up from his phone. His eyes were steady, resolute. "We expose her. Together. Make her face what she has done." Tyler's throat tightened. He could almost hear Rachel's voice in his memory, sharp, mocking, belittling. The way she had called him fetch as if he were nothing but an obedient dog. The way she had treated people like objects to rearrange. He thought of the fear in the eyes of those employees who had watched him walk out. "I'm in," Tyler said, his voice steadier than he expected. "But we do this carefully. She's dangerous when cornered." For the first time since they met, Mr. Kim smiled. A small, tired smile, but real. "Good," he typed. "Because I already have plan." Tyler blinked. "A plan? Already?" Mr. Kim nodded slowly, eyes glinting with something between mischief and determination. "But first," the app translated, "you need new job." Tyler leaned forward. "What kind of job?" Mr. Kim's eyes warmed and the faintest spark lit within them, a spark that made Tyler's breath catch. The kind of spark that promised everything was about to change. 1 week later, Tyler stood in front of the mirrored glass doors of Innovate Capital, his breath fogging softly in the morning air. The building towered above him, sharp and immaculate, reflecting the city skyline with a kind of cold confidence he wished he could borrow. He tugged gently at the cuff of his new tailored suit, far nicer than anything he had ever worn, and tried to ground himself. This was real, all of it, a new job, a new world. And beneath it all, a dangerous mission shaped in shadows. He inhaled once, deeply, then stepped inside. The lobby was a swirl of soft marble tones and hushed voices, punctuated by the distant clicking of polished shoes. It was the kind of place where people moved with purpose, where every inch of space whispered wealth, ambition, pressure. "Welcome to Innovate Capital," the receptionist said with a warm but practiced smile. Tyler returned the smile, though his nerves twisted inside him. "Thank you. Cultural Liaison Specialist." That was the title printed on his ID badge. It sounded dignified, almost prestigious, and in a way, he would help foreign investors understand American business customs, navigate documents, bridge communication gaps. It was the kind of role that required trust, empathy, clarity. But beneath that polished description lay the truth. He had been placed here by Mr. Kim. Tucked quietly into the center of Rachel Thompson's newest hunting ground. His job wasn't just communication. It was surveillance, protection, exposure, evidence. He repeated the words silently as if they were anchors sinking into his chest, holding him steady. On the first day, he met his small team. Everyone seemed friendly, efficient, a little wary of the new hire, but polite. No one asked too many questions. Innovate Capital wasn't that kind of place. Everyone was too busy chasing the next deal, the next commission, the next step up the invisible ladder. By day 2, he had settled into a quiet rhythm, listening, observing, learning how the firm breathed. By day 3, everything changed. He was reviewing a stack of cultural briefing materials when a sudden shift in the hallway's atmosphere made him glance up. People straightened subtly, their voices lowering. A ripple of attention passing through the workspace like an instinctive warning. Then she stepped inside. Rachel. Hair flawlessly styled, heels tapping out a confident rhythm, a portfolio tucked under her arm like a weapon she wielded without mercy. Her smile was bright, polished, and entirely performative. Tyler felt his stomach drop. She walked past him, so close he could have touched the sleeve of her blazer. But she didn't even look at him. Not once. Not yet. He dropped his gaze, forcing his breath to stay even. His pulse hammered. For a moment, the room seemed to shrink around him. "Hey," a voice whispered beside him. "Careful." He blinked and turned. Jennifer, the analyst from the desk across the aisle, leaned in slightly. Her eyes were sharp, observant in a way that made Tyler think she saw far more than she ever let on. "That's Rachel Thompson," she murmured, her tone low and measured. "Be careful around her. She's charming, but she's ruthless. People say she smiles while she bleeds you dry." Tyler managed a small, careful nod. "I've heard stories." Jennifer exhaled softly, almost in relief at having someone to share her unease with. Then she tapped a digital folder on her tablet and slid it subtly toward him. "Take a look at her latest pitch," she said. "Supposedly biotech innovation with huge overseas potential. She's targeting a Japanese pharmaceutical investor this time. Claims she's offering exclusivity." Tyler kept his expression neutral even as his insides tightened. He knew that pattern well. Too well. He skimmed the document's language polished, numbers inflated, urgency manufactured. It was a script Rachel had perfected. One that had succeeded again and again because she understood two things deeply: greed and vulnerability. After hours, when most of the office had emptied out and the soft hum of the cleaning crew drifted through the hallways, Tyler returned to Jennifer's digital folder. He photographed every page carefully, his hands steady even as a faint tremor pulsed beneath his ribs. Once done, he tucked his phone away and whispered into the empty room, "Here we go." Outside on the sidewalk, under the glow of a street lamp, he sent the images to Mr. Kim. The reply came within minutes. "Same pattern, different victim. We need get her on record." Tyler stared at the message for a long moment. He felt the weight of responsibility pressing against him, not crushing, but firm, like the hand of someone urging him forward. The next morning, he began attending Rachel's preliminary meetings under the guise of offering cultural guidance. He sat quietly at the side of the conference room, taking notes, watching every nuance. Rachel, as always, performed. She flattered effortlessly, praising her target's business acumen. She created urgency with carefully crafted deadlines. She navigated around language barriers, using charm as a solvent to dissolve misunderstandings or hesitation. Her laughter was warm, her gaze direct, her tone reassuring. To someone inexperienced, she was a savior. To Tyler, she was a predator wearing silk. On the fourth meeting, during a short break, she finally noticed him. She paused, head tilted slightly, gaze narrowing. "Don't I know you from somewhere?" The air left Tyler's lungs. For a moment, his body froze. His thoughts scrambled like glass scattering across a floor. But when he spoke, his voice was steady, almost too calm. "I don't think so, ma'am. I just started here." Rachel stared at him for several seconds, far too long. Suspicion flickered in her eyes like the reflection of a flame. "You look familiar." He forced a polite smile. "I have one of those faces." Then, before the tension could grow roots, he excused himself with a slight bow of his head and walked toward the far end of the hallway. Only when he turned the corner out of her line of sight did he let his breath escape in a quiet, shaky stream. That night, he met with Mr. Kim again in the same quiet coffee shop where their alliance had begun. The folder now held twice as many documents, twice as many risks. "Mr." Kim folded his hands, his expression solemn. "She suspects nothing?" he asked through the translator app. Tyler shook his head. "Not yet. But she's looking too closely. She's hunting." Mr. Kim nodded slowly, the lines around his mouth tense with understanding. "Good," the app translated. "Then she ready." Tyler blinked. "Ready for what?" Mr. Kim's eyes lifted, steady and calm in a way that both comforted and unnerved him. "We need make her think she winning," the app said. "Then we spring trap?" Tyler stared at him, heart pounding, the magnitude settling over him like a heavy but welcome cloak. He had stepped into a game played in shadows. Now they were preparing to turn on the lights. Tyler arrived 2 hours early to the quiet private dining room that Mr. Kim had rented for the evening. The restaurant was the kind of place where the walls glowed softly, as if the lighting had been designed to flatter the wealthy into believing their lives were gentler than they were. Tyler stood near the window, looking out at passing cars, smoothing the sleeves of his blazer with restless fingers. Even his reflection looked unfamiliar: glasses, neatly parted hair, a faint shadow of beard he hadn't shaved to help alter his appearance. He wondered for the 1,000th time if Rachel would see through all of it. He inhaled slowly, reminding himself that he wasn't alone in this. Not anymore. Mr. Kim had orchestrated everything with a precision that still amazed Tyler. Even the investor had been chosen with care. Mrs. Park, Mr. Kim's cousin, carried herself with the same effortless confidence as her real-world reputation suggested. A powerful sole real estate mogul who could buy half the block if she felt like it. And yet, tonight, she would become someone else entirely. Just before 6 p.m., Mrs. Park entered, wrapped in a charcoal coat and looking every bit the wealthy foreign visitor. But when she removed her sunglasses, her expression softened into something gentler, almost hesitant. "Do I look gullible enough?" she asked quietly in Korean. Tyler smiled despite his nerves. "You look perfect. She'll think you're the easiest target she's met all month, Mrs." Park gave a small huff, half amusement, half irritation. To be underestimated, it's a skill. Women like her never imagined someone richer than themselves could also be smarter. Tyler nodded, though his stomach churned. Tonight wasn't about intelligence, it was about danger. As the minutes ticked by, the tension grew tight enough to snap. Tyler checked his phone, no messages from Mr. Kim. That was good. It meant everything was on track. It meant Rachel had taken the bait. At 6:37 p.m., she swept in. Rachel always moved like the world parted for her, as though people were door frames she expected to walk through. She wore a white fitted dress that made her look angelic, almost disarmingly soft, but Tyler knew better. Predators wore innocence like perfume. Her gaze skimmed the room, calculated, alert, and then landed on Mrs. Park with a warm, practiced smile. "Mrs. Park," she said, voice honeyed. "It's such an honor to finally meet you in person." Tyler stayed half a step behind, head lowered just enough to look unremarkable. His heart thudded hard against his ribs when Rachel's eyes passed over him. For a moment, she paused, a flicker of curiosity, or suspicion, but she moved on. They sat, and dinner began, an elegant parade of dishes Tyler hardly saw. He was listening, translating, observing every shift in Rachel's expression. Rachel spoke with charisma so polished it almost glittered. She laughed at the right moments, told personal stories that sounded spontaneous but weren't. She even leaned in as though sharing secrets. "American real estate can be complicated," Rachel said softly, placing a manicured hand over her chest. "But I believe in guiding my clients with honesty. You can trust me, Mrs. Park." Her smile was saintly, hollow. Tyler maintained the mask of dutiful translator, though inside he nearly scoffed. Honesty. Rachel had rewritten the meaning of the word for her convenience. Mrs. Park played her role with delicate, brilliant size wide, shoulders slightly tensed, leaning forward as if hungry for reassurance. "I want advisor who is, how you say, trustworthy," Mrs. Park said, her Korean accented English carefully imperfect. "You look like very honest person," Tyler translated, adding subtle tremors of uncertainty to the tone. Rachel practically glowed under the false praise. "I pride myself on integrity," she replied, and Tyler almost choked on his water. He covered it with a cough, excused himself gently, and kept his gaze low when he sat back down. But Rachel's eyes lingered on him. Again, something in her furrowed brow. A twitch at the corner of her mouth. She was trying to place him, trying to peel back layers she sensed didn't quite fit. Tyler straightened his glasses, kept his voice steady. "Would you like me to translate the next section, ma'am?" "Of course," she said smoothly, but her gaze dragged across his face for a beat too long. "You know, I swear I've met you before." His chest tightened, but before he could speak, Mrs. Park intervened gently, placing a hand on Tyler's arm. "My translator works only for me," she said with a small, apologetic smile. "He is a very private person, prefer not talking much." Rachel blinked, caught off guard, and retreated with a nod. But the suspicion didn't disappear. It settled somewhere behind her eyes, simmering. Dinner continued. Rachel presented glossy documents, preliminary contracts deliberately confusing. Letters of intent designed to entrap, clauses written to deceive. She spoke of urgency, of limited slots, of opportunities slipping away. She leaned forward, softened her voice, and painted herself as a guardian of Mrs. Park's interests. Tyler watched every calculated move, every half-truth, every subtle manipulation. The performance was flawless, beautiful even, a finely tuned act perfected through years of exploiting those who didn't know the system, the language, or the hidden dangers. When they stepped outside at the end of the night, the sky had deepened into navy blue, the air cool against Tyler's overheated skin. Mrs. Park exhaled loudly once the restaurant door closed behind them. "She is Snake," Mrs. Park murmured. "Cold eyes." Tyler let out a shaky laugh. "That's the most accurate description I've heard." His phone buzzed almost instantly. "Mr. Kim, did she take bait?" The message read. Tyler typed back with trembling hands. "Hook, line, and sinker. But she's starting to recognize me. We need to move faster." He stared at the glowing screen for a moment after sending the message, feeling the weight of everything pressing against his ribs. Rachel was close. Too close. And the trap. It was beginning to tighten. It rained the morning the contracts arrived, thin, steady rain that traced lines down the office windows like trembling hands. Tyler sat at his desk, a stack of documents in front of him, the pages still cool from the courier envelope. Each sheet carried that polished veneer of legitimacy Rachel excelled at crafting. Expensive paper, embossed logos, crisp formatting meant to lull the reader into a sense of safety. But Tyler felt a pit settle in his stomach before he even began reading. 3 days had passed since the dinner where Rachel nearly recognized him. 3 days of anxiety thrumming beneath his skin like a second heartbeat. 3 days of waiting for the next step in a game that felt more dangerous with every move. Now, the contracts were here. He took a slow breath, picked up the first page, and began reviewing. It didn't take long for dread to sink deeper. Hidden clauses, buried definitions, ambiguous statements that appeared innocuous but were engineered to strip Mrs. Park of every legal defense she might have had. Halfway through, he stopped, staring at one paragraph so coldly predatory it felt like a fingerprint left on a crime. Rachel wasn't just trying to deceive investors. She wanted absolute control, power of attorney over Mrs. Park's accounts, full rights to manage, maintain, acquire, or liquidate properties at her discretion. Even access to Mrs. Park's private financial data, masked under vague administrative processing. Tyler leaned back in his chair, his breath unsteady. His fingers trembled as he lifted another page, flipping through more traps hidden beneath phrases like industry standard, mutual interest, and expedited procedures. She had refined her crime into art. By the time he finished reading, he felt sick. He scanned the pages again, marking each clause with a small pencil dot, then took photos from multiple angles, sending everything to Mr. Kim's encrypted line. His thumb hovered for a moment before hitting send, as if by sending the evidence he was locking them all into a path from which there was no return. Mr. Kim responded faster than Tyler expected, bringing in legal team now. Do not leave office. Within half an hour, Tyler stood in a private conference room with 2 attorneys from Mr. Kim's trusted circle. Their expressions hardened visibly as they read the documents. One muttered something in Korean under his breath, a word that tasted like disbelief and disgust. "This is criminal fraud," the older attorney finally said, tapping the paper with the back of his pen, clear intent to steal, to deceive, to control. If she executed these contracts, Mrs. Park would lose everything within months. But will it hold up in court? Tyler asked quietly. It should, the attorney replied. But intent matters. And patterns matter even more. Judges want proof she didn't make a mistake. They want to see she's done this before. Tyler swallowed hard. We don't have that on record. No, Mr. Kim said. But we will. He turned to Tyler, searching his expression with a seriousness that made Tyler straighten instinctively. We need her to confess, Mr. Kim continued. Not legally, but casually, naturally. Enough to demonstrate her pattern. Enough to show she knows exactly what she is doing. Tyler felt a chill roll down his spine. She'll never confess anything if she feels threatened. Exactly, Mr. Kim said. So she must feel safe, victorious, certain she's already won. A risky idea rose in Tyler's mind, unsteady but persistent. What if you give her a reason to gloat? Mr. Kim's brows lifted. How? Tyler forced himself to speak the words. She's arrogant. When she thinks she's won, she loves to brag. If we let her believe Mrs. Park signed the contracts, she'll start boasting. Mr. Kim considered it. Silence stretched across the room until he nodded slowly. Dangerous, but possible. And so the plan was set. A celebration dinner. A night where Rachel believed her scheme had succeeded, where wine could ease her tongue, where her own ego might expose her for who she was. 3 days later, that night arrived. The restaurant was more extravagant than the first gold fixtures, velvet chairs, candlelight reflecting softly in the dark windows. It was the kind of place where people pretended their morals weighed less than their money. Rachel fit into the atmosphere perfectly, her confidence almost ostentatious as she entered. She was radiant in a crimson dress, the color bold and triumphant, like she'd already pictured herself depositing Mrs. Park's non-existent millions. Her smile was bright as she approached them. Congratulations are in order, she said warmly, sliding into her seat. This will be a very profitable partnership. Tyler kept his head low, adjusting his glasses, letting his changed hairstyle obscure a part of his face. He could feel her eyes flick to him again, lingering, but already dulled by self-satisfaction. Rachel ordered the most expensive wine on the menu without blinking, and when it arrived, she lifted her glass high. To new alliances, she said, and new beginnings. They clinked glasses. Tyler barely tasted the wine, his pulse thudding dully in his ears. He excused himself a few minutes later, mumbling something about the restroom, but instead slipped into a reserved back room. He checked the hidden recording devices, 3 tiny units disguised within the wall fixtures and floral arrangements. With a small switch, they activated, lights blinking green. He returned to the table, heart pounding. Mrs. Park played her part beautifully, her voice soft, curious, almost admiring. Ms. Thompson, how did you become so successful in investment? Rachel laughed, a rich, careless laugh softened by the wine warming her cheeks. Confidence, she said, leaning back in her chair, and knowing that most foreign investors don't read the fine print carefully. Tyler's jaw tensed. Mrs. Park tilted her head. You have helped many international clients? Oh, dozens, Rachel said casually. They come here dazzled by American business, and they just trust. Each word felt like a knife turning slowly. Rachel took another sip of wine, eyes bright, pride swelling. There was this Korean tech guy a few months ago. Almost had him for $12 million until some idiot coffee boy interfered. Tyler froze. His lungs stalled, as if the air had thickened into something he couldn't breathe. A ringing filled his ears. Coffee boy? Mrs. Park asked innocently. Some nobody who thought he could speak Korean, Rachel sneered. Fired him on the spot. Probably homeless now. Something in Tyler cracks. Something small, but vital. A splinter of dignity he had spent months trying to mend. The casual cruelty in her voice was so effortless, so dismissive. It made his hands tighten until his knuckles whitened. Rachel leaned in conspiratorially. The trick is making them feel special while their money disappears into offshore accounts they'll never find. Mrs. Park's eyes hardened, the softness evaporating. That sounds illegal, Miss Thompson. Rachel froze, her glass halfway to her mouth. A flicker of panic sparked, quickly masked. I'm joking, of course. Just business talk. But the damage was done. And Tyler couldn't stay seated anymore. The words left him before he fully realized he was standing. "It's not a joke," he said, voice trembling but steadying with each syllable. "Not to the people you've destroyed." Rachel's head snapped toward him, eyes wide. The room fell silent, and the trap began to close. Rachel's breath hitched, just a small, sharp sound, when Tyler reached up and slid his glasses off. The simple motion felt strangely ceremonial, like shedding the last layer of the disguise he'd been wearing for months. His hair fell slightly over his forehead, the angle of his jaw clearer now. The softness in his eyes replaced by something steadier, colder, older than his years. Recognition crashed through her like a physical blow. "You," she whispered. It wasn't anger at first. It was fear, real fear, rippling across her features as she staggered to her feet, so abruptly her chair clattered to the floor. Conversations around them broke off mid-sentence. Cutlery froze in midair. The entire restaurant seemed to inhale and hold its breath. "This is a setup," she shouted, her voice cracking on the last word. Several diners turned in their seats. A server halted by the wine cart, stunned. The soft candlelit atmosphere collapsed into tension so thick Tyler could practically taste the metallic tang of it on his tongue. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His words carried years of humiliation, quiet suffering, and the kind of pain that had carved itself into the way he walked, the way he chose silence over confrontation. But now, finally, he let it speak. "You stole from Mr. Kim," Tyler said, every syllable slow and precise. "From the Anderson family. And from at least 3 others we've documented." Rachel flinched as though slapped. Her eyes darted toward the entrance, the instinct to flee kicking in entirely on reflex. She made it 2 steps. Then Mr. Kim stepped into view. He wasn't loud, nor did he posture. He simply appeared calm, composed, wearing a dark suit and an expression that held the quiet certainty of someone who had prepared for this moment down to the second. Rachel skidded to a stop. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." She spun around to Mrs. Park only to find the elderly softness erased from her posture. Mrs. Park straightened with a controlled, almost predatory grace, shedding her disguise like a heavy coat. The warmth vanished from her expression, her gaze now sharp, unwavering. Her voice was firm, professional, nothing like the naive investor Rachel had manipulated hours earlier. "Rachel Thompson," she said, "you have the right to remain silent. This is entrapment." Rachel shrieked, her voice cracking into hysteria. "None of this is legal. I will sue all of you." Tyler stood still, steadying his breathing. All he could think about were the people Rachel had hurt. People who didn't know English well enough to defend themselves. People who trusted too easily. People who didn't fit into the neatly polished world she fed on. Mr. Kim approached Rachel with a calmness that only made her panic more pronounced. "Everything is legal," he said softly. "Your confession was voluntary. Our contracts were fake. We signed nothing, stole nothing. You can't prove anything?" Rachel cried, desperation thickening her voice. Tyler's hand moved to his pocket. Slowly, deliberately. He pulled out his phone. A single tap, and her voice clear, sharp, damning filled the space between them, pouring from the small speaker like poison being forced into daylight. Rachel describing her frauds, her strategies, her victims. The cruel laughter when she mentioned the idiot coffee boy. Her face drained of every last trace of color. Her mouth fell open, trembling, speechless for the first time. That's not admissible," she choked out. "Actually, it is," came a calm voice from behind her. Detective Morrison stepped forward, flipping open a badge. Her presence felt like the final lock clicking into place. "And we've been building a case against you for 6 months. These individuals simply accelerated our timeline." Rachel spun toward Tyler with sudden, theatrical desperation, her specialty. "Tyler, please," she begged, tears welling instantly, shining too brightly, too quickly. "I'm sorry I fired you. I was stressed." "You know I didn't mean those things." Her voice quivered at the edges. Her hands trembled. Anyone who didn't know her might have believed her, but Tyler did. He met her gaze, and for the first time, he didn't feel small in front of her. "You meant every word," he said. His voice didn't shake, not this time. "You've always meant every word." Her eyes hardened, the performance dissolving in an instant. Tyler continued, the words rising from a place he'd buried for far too long. "You didn't just steal money, you stole dignity. You made people feel small, worthless, because of where they came from, or what they looked like, or how new they were to this country." Rachel's face twisted, her voice dropping into a snarl. "You ungrateful," the venom in her tone thickened. "You were nothing, a coffee boy, I gave you a job." Tyler's chest rose in a slow breath. He didn't look away. "You gave me minimum wage and maximum humiliation," he said. "But you also gave me clarity. Clarity about who I never want to become." The words hit her harder than anything else that night. Detective Morrison moved beside Rachel, voice firm, controlled, unwavering. "Rachel Thompson, you are under arrest for charges including fraud, financial coercion, falsifying documentation, and targeted exploitation." She began reading the Miranda rights. Rachel screamed, shrill, feral, all pretense gone. Insults, threats, wild accusations thrown at everyone in the room. "I'll destroy you," she screamed as officers restrained her. "All of you. This isn't over. I'll—" Her voice was cut short as they pushed her toward the exit. But as she passed Tyler, she locked eyes with him one last time. Something in her stare, not fear, not guilt, just raw, burning hatred, the kind that clings like smoke. "This isn't over," she hissed. Tyler exhaled slowly. For the first time in months, maybe years, the air didn't feel suffocating. He wasn't trembling. His voice hadn't broken. He had stood there face to face with the person who once made him feel invisible. And he hadn't looked away. No matter what Rachel believed, Tyler knew the truth. This chapter, her chapter, was over, and his was finally beginning. The following weeks didn't unfold so much as they blurred, melting one into another in a haze of fluorescent-lit conference rooms. Depositions that lasted until his voice felt scraped raw, and lawyer meetings where every sentence seemed to hang in the air like something that could be weaponized. Tyler moved through it all with the quiet precision of someone who'd run out of adrenaline but didn't yet have the luxury of collapsing. He showed up to every meeting, every briefing, every line of questioning, even when his thoughts felt shredded at the edges. Rachel's arrest made headlines instantly. He saw it first on someone's phone screen as he passed a cafe socialite scammer arrested after targeting foreign investors. A photo of her being escorted out of the restaurant, her rage frozen in the camera's flash, was plastered everywhere within hours. Strangers read about her downfall while sipping lattes, unaware of the weight he still carried in his chest. The world seemed so certain about what happened, so eager to point fingers and build narratives. But Tyler didn't feel triumphant. He didn't feel like a hero, just tired. Reporters began camping outside his apartment, knocking at his door, calling his name from the sidewalk as if they were entitled to pieces of him he didn't want to give. They called him the hero barista, the whistleblower, the quiet immigrant who exposed a millionaire scammer. They made him into something sharp and shiny, something he didn't recognize. Every morning, he opened the curtains slightly and felt his stomach twist at the crowd gathered on the street. One night, after he'd spent the entire day answering lawyers' questions about Rachel's contracts, motivations, timelines, and every tiny interaction he'd ever had with her, Min-jun and Swa dragged him out of his apartment for a quiet dinner. Just the three of them. A small table, warm food, soft lights, something human. Something gentle. "You saved people," Sua said softly as she refilled his tea. "That's what matters, Tyler. Not the headlines, not the noise." He nodded, grateful. But something in him remained unsettled. Rachel's final words from the restaurant still rang inside him like a bell that refused to stop vibrating. This isn't over. He wanted to dismiss it as empty fury, a final attempt at intimidation, but the unease wouldn't leave, and he was right not to ignore it. A week later, an envelope arrived at his apartment door. No return address. Inside, a single sheet of paper with jagged handwriting. You destroyed my life. I'll destroy yours. It wasn't Rachel's handwriting. He sat on his couch staring at it for several minutes before calling Detective Morrison. She arrived fast, her expression tightening as she read the note. Rachel has connections we're still uncovering, she said. Family money, old business partners, people who benefited from her schemes. Am I in danger? Tyler asked, his voice low but steady. He wasn't afraid to hear the truth, only afraid of not knowing it. Possibly, she admitted. We're working on protective measures. Stay alert. Don't walk alone at night. Keep your phone on you. Her honesty grounded him. Fear flickered in his chest, but so did something else. Resolve. He'd come too far to step back now. The next day, Mr. Kim invited him to lunch at a quiet, upscale restaurant. Away from reporters, away from the disorder. After the meal, Mr. Kim folded his hands and said gently, Tyler, I have a position for you at my real company, a proper job. In Seoul. A fresh start, safety. Everything you deserve. It was tempting, so deeply tempting, to run, to let the story end there, to claim a life far from the noise, far from the threats. But something in him tightened at the idea of leaving. Running felt wrong. Like abandoning a story that wasn't finished. I appreciate it, Tyler said, meaning it, more than you know. But I need to see this through. Here. Mr. Kim nodded, not disappointed, only understanding. As spring crept in, the trial date was announced. Rachel's defense team emerged like a small army. They launched a media campaign that painted her as a visionary woman sabotaged by jealous competitors. She was rebranded as a misunderstood entrepreneur, a victim of manipulative foreign investors who didn't understand American business culture. Every time Tyler saw a headline twisting reality, something inside him clenched. Jennifer, his old colleague from Innovate Capital, called him late one night. She didn't bother with greetings. They're going after you personally, she said. Rachel's PR team is digging into your past. Anything they can spin. My past is clean, Tyler replied. Doesn't matter, Jennifer whispered. Perception wins trials. Not truth. The words landed heavier than he expected. Soon after, Rachel's legal team subpoenaed him. They planned to paint him as a con artist, a manipulative opportunist who cozied up to Mr. Kim for money. It was a strategy built on distortion, but Tyler knew how easily distortions could become accepted as fact. During the pre-trial deposition, he sat across from William Brentwood, Rachel's lead attorney. The man radiated polished brutality-tailored suit, sharp glasses, a voice smooth enough to be mistaken for polite until one listened carefully. Brentwood slid his glasses up the bridge of his nose. Mr. Lee, isn't it true you befriended Mr. Kim with a financial motive? Tyler kept his breathing steady. I warned Mr. Kim because it was the right thing to do. And you were immediately rewarded with employment opportunities worth 6 figures. Convenient, don't you think? Tyler swallowed. I didn't ask for that job. Doesn't matter whether you asked. You benefited. That's the narrative we're establishing. Tyler felt the trap tightening around him, the way Brentwood's questions lured him into invisible corners. He kept his hands folded, kept his voice calm, even as his pulse thudded in his throat. Then he noticed something, just a glimpse on the paperwork Brentwood pushed toward him. A logo, a company name, one he recognized from the list of entities Rachel used to funnel money. For a moment, everything inside Tyler went still, as if his entire mind exhaled in shock. The connection wasn't just coincidence. Something deeper was happening, something that meant the fight ahead would be far more dangerous than he'd imagined. That night, Tyler didn't even turn on the lights when he got home. He sat at his desk in the dim glow of his laptop, the room barely illuminated except for that small circle around him. He wasn't hungry. He wasn't tired. His nerves were too sharp for either. Instead, he followed a hunch, one that had been gnawing at him since the deposition. Since that moment, he noticed the familiar company name in Brentwood's file. He typed William Brentwood into the search bar, but he didn't stop at the crisp biography pages or the polished interviews that projected an image of sophistication and moral certainty. He dove deep. Old case lists, obscure financial filings, archived news articles that had been forgotten by most. He traced the names of Brentwood's clients across years, across cities, across patterns that seemed too deliberate to be coincidence. Hours passed unnoticed. Then he found it. Brentwood's firm had once represented one of Rachel's earliest victims, a small investor from San Diego who'd lost everything. They fought aggressively on behalf of the client. Then, without explanation, they had withdrawn. Abruptly. The case vanished from public updates. The lawsuit settled quietly, sealed. And, a few months later, the same law firm began receiving unusually large payments from a shell company registered in the Cayman Islands. Tyler followed that shell company through every scrap of information available, each click tightening something in his chest. 3 layers deep, the shell company connected directly to one of Rachel's offshore accounts. Stared at the screen, pulse hammering. Brentwood wasn't just her attorney. He was a partner in her crimes. The realization felt like lightning, violent, electrifying, undeniable. Tyler grabbed his phone and immediately called Detective Morrison. She picked up on the second ring, her voice thick with exhaustion. "Detective, it's Brentwood," Tyler said, breath uneven. "The lawyer is in on it. He's been helping her hide money, Mr. Lee." Morrison exhaled slowly, a hint of skepticism in her tone. "That's a very serious accusation. Are you sure you're not?" "I'm looking at the financial trail right now," he insisted. "Shell companies tied to Rachel, payments to Brentwood's firm. It's all right here. We'll need proof," she said gently. "Verifiable, prosecutable proof. Send me what you have." He did. But he didn't stop there. He reached out to Mr. Kim's legal team, who responded within minutes despite the late hour. They began pulling financial records, cross-referencing corporate documents, widening the investigation with a precision that made Tyler feel less alone. Yet even with this progress, danger tightened around him. The next threatening letter arrived the following morning. This time, it wasn't just words. Inside the envelope were photos, grainy, taken from a distance, but unmistakable. His apartment building, his walk to work, the little coffee shop on 7th where he always ordered the same thing, iced Americano with 2 pumps of vanilla. Someone was watching him. Minjun didn't even hesitate. "You're staying with me," he said firmly, folding his arms in a way that made argument impossible. "You think I'm letting you sleep alone while someone is photographing your windows? Forget it." Tyler opened his mouth to protest, but something in him softened instead. For days, he'd been carrying everything alone, absorbing every fear, every piece of pressure. The thought of staying with Min Jun, of not being alone, was a relief he hadn't realized he needed. As Tyler packed a small bag that afternoon, his phone pinged with a new email. Encrypted. Unknown sender. He opened it cautiously, expecting spam or worse, but the moment the attachment loaded, his breath stopped. They were internal communications. Real ones. Emails between Rachel and Brentwood. Payment instructions. Discussions of contingency accounts. Plans for relocation. All written in cold, businesslike language that stripped the crimes of their emotional weight and revealed their brutality for what it truly was. Someone inside their circle was leaking information. He scrolled through the emails in disbelief because the last file was the worst. A detailed plan for Rachel to disappear if the trial went poorly. Brentwood had already begun moving her money into untraceable accounts. Tyler forwarded everything to Detective Morrison and the FBI. His fingers trembled as he hit send. And that was the moment his phone rang. Rachel, out on bail. Her voice was eerily calm, almost serene, like someone from whom reality had already slipped. "Tyler," she said, "meet me." His breath caught. "Why would I ever?" "Because if you don't," she continued softly, "your friends Minjun and Swa will have unfortunate accidents." A cold, sick fear sliced through him. "If you touch them, then come," she interrupted, still calm. "Tonight. Old Riverside Warehouse, 5th Street, 9 o'clock. Alone." The line went dead. His hands shook so badly he nearly dropped the phone. He didn't hesitate. He left a note for Minjun, short, apologetic, but truthful enough that Minjun would know to call for help. Then he contacted Detective Morrison, who didn't waste time demanding he stay put. "We'll be there," she said. "Backup will be staged nearby. Don't be a hero, just stay alive." He drove to the warehouse as the sky darkened, the city fading into shadows. The building loomed large and abandoned, windows broken, doors rusted, the perfect setting for something terrible. Tyler stepped inside slowly, his phone recording, every instinct screaming at him to turn back. The air smelled of dust and oil. Water dripped somewhere in the distance. A movement stirred in the far corner. Rachel stepped out of the shadows, but she wasn't alone. Brentwood stood beside her, the polished attorney now stripped of his courtroom confidence. And two large men, a silent wall of muscle, guarded the exits, their attention fixed on Tyler. Rachel smiled, but it wasn't the calculated smirk he remembered. Something in her eyes flickered between triumph and something unhinged. "You really thought you won?" she asked softly. Her voice echoed through the warehouse, sliding into the empty spaces like a cold draft. And as Tyler stood facing her, he understood. This wasn't about the money anymore. It wasn't about the trial. This was about power. And Rachel was willing to destroy anything to keep it. The federal courthouse felt heavier than any building Tyler had ever entered, a place where stories ended, lives were reshaped, and truth was forced into the light, whether someone wanted it there or not. As he walked toward the witness stand, he felt the weight of months of fear, exhaustion, and resolve pressing against his ribs. Yet his steps remained steady. He had carried this far too long to falter now. When he was sworn in, his voice didn't shake. It surprised even him. He thought it might crack under the memory of everything. Rachel's calculated charm, the lies she told with that bright, polished smile, the warehouse's cold air, the sting of betrayal. But when he spoke, his words were clear. He told them about the original scam, about the first moment he realized something was wrong, about how Rachel targeted people who trusted her. He described the investigation, each step of the careful trap she set, and the trap he quietly began setting back. He spoke of the warehouse confrontation, the moment he truly understood how far she was willing to go. Across the courtroom, Rachel sat motionless. Her posture was perfect, her hair immaculate, but her expression seemed drained of color. Not fear, not remorse, just nothing. A hollow kind of stillness that made Tyler's chest tighten. One witness after another followed him. James Anderson, hands trembling, voice breaking as he described losing his retirement savings. A Japanese investor with gentle manners and halting English, explaining how Rachel manipulated his limitations and made him feel stupid for trusting her. Then a long line of others, people from different states, backgrounds, industries, yet all carrying the same wound. 5 years. 5 years of patterns, deception, quiet cruelty. And finally came the cross-examination. Brentwood's replacement, a sharp-faced attorney with a cutting tone, leaned on the podium and narrowed his eyes at Tyler. "So," he began, "you orchestrated an elaborate revenge scheme against my client. Isn't that correct? How is that justice?" The courtroom held its breath. Tyler felt his pulse slow, not quicken. He could see Rachel watching him, waiting for him to defend himself, maybe hoping he'd lash out. But he didn't. "It wasn't revenge," he said softly, the way someone speaks when they've already wrestled privately with their own conscience. "It was accountability. There's a difference." He paused, letting the words settle into the silence. "Rachel made choices. I just made sure those choices had consequences." The attorney tried to push him, tried to twist the answer into something darker, something vindictive. But Tyler didn't budge. By the time he stepped down, he felt an odd mix of sorrow and relief, like closing a door he never wanted to open in the first place. The jury deliberated for only 3 hours. When they returned, the air in the courtroom felt electric. Everyone sat straighter. Everyone sensed the ending. Guilty. Guilty on fraud, guilty on conspiracy, guilty on money laundering, guilty on extortion. Tyler inhaled slowly. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't celebrating. He was simply absorbing the truth. Justice had finally arrived. Rachel didn't react. Not even when her father, seated behind her, stood silently and walked toward the aisle only to be intercepted by 2 FBI agents who had clearly been waiting. The metal cuffs clicked loudly in the hush, and whispers erupted across the room as Richard Thompson, once so powerful, was led away without ceremony. It was then that Rachel broke. "This is because I'm a white woman succeeding in business," she screamed, her voice cracking under the strain. "They can't handle powerful women." Judge Martinez didn't raise her voice, didn't show anger, didn't even blink. "Ms. Thompson," she said calmly, "this is because you committed multiple felonies. Your gender and race are irrelevant to your crimes." The courtroom fell silent again, not out of shock, but out of clarity. 2 weeks later, sentencing arrived. Rachel received 12 years, with a possibility of parole after 8. Brentwood earned 10. Richard Thompson faced a different court, a different set of crimes. His future likely measured in decades, not years. Outside the courthouse, reporters surrounded Tyler. Cameras flashed. Microphones hovered inches from his face. "How do you feel?" one asked. He let out a breath he had been holding for months. "Grateful," he said honestly. "Grateful for friends who taught me Korean, for Mr. Kim's courage, for everyone who spoke up when it mattered." "And Rachel Thompson?" another reporter asked. "Do you forgive her?" That question lingered. He let it settle into the air, searching for the truth in himself. "Forgiveness isn't mine to give alone," he finally said. "She hurt too many people. But I hope prison gives her time to become someone better." 3 months later, Tyler stood in his new office in New York, a bright, glass-walled space at Kim Enterprises. Director of Ethics and International Relations, it still felt surreal when he said it out loud. His first major project, creating a program to help immigrant entrepreneurs recognize scams, like the one that nearly destroyed him. Sua and Min Jun visited on his first week. They stood near the window, staring at the sweeping view of the skyline. "Remember when we were just gaming in your tiny apartment?" Sua laughed. Tyler smiled. "I miss those simpler times." "But you're doing important work now," Minjun said, more serious. "You're protecting people." That afternoon, Tyler received a letter. The handwriting was small, shaky, almost uncertain. "Rachel." He sat for a long moment before opening it. "I don't expect forgiveness," she wrote. "I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know I'm taking classes here, learning what I should have learned long ago. You were right. I was nobody. Not because of my job or my status, but because I forgot how to be human. Thank you for reminding me that actions have consequences. Maybe that's the only way some of us learn." He didn't write back, but he didn't throw the letter away either. That evening, he met Mr. Kim for dinner. The older man raised a glass and smiled warmly. "You gave up a lot to do the right thing," he said. Tyler shook his head. "I gained more than I lost. Self-respect, purpose, real relationships, and justice for people who couldn't fight back. They toasted not to victory, but to second chances. For the victims rebuilding their lives. For Tyler finding a future he didn't expect. Even for Rachel, if she truly wanted to change. Walking home through the soft glow of the city lights, Tyler passed a small coffee shop. The smell of roasted beans drifted into the night air, and he felt his chest warm with something bittersweet. He would always remember where he started. Because the coffee boy who noticed a scam, who spoke up when it mattered, who refused to be silent in the face of injustice, that person had always been powerful. Rachel just never learned to see it, and now the world finally did. If you enjoyed this chapter, subscribe to the channel for more stories like this.